Hello, everyone. This is Terry Mitchell with Voice on Fire, interviews with intentions. For those of you who may not have tuned in before, I am on a mission to interview people from around the world, people that are making a difference, people that I consider are action takers, difference makers, people that are making a difference somewhere in terms of their local community or around on the global platform. And I think my guest today certainly fits that criteria. Welcome to Voice on Fire. Jessie Liew, you're in Malaysia. Thank you for joining me on Voice on Fire.
Thanks, Terry, for inviting me on the Voice on Fire interview. I'm actually excited to be on your podcast.
Fantastic. It's a great opportunity for you to share information about what it is you do. And that's usually the first question that I like to get right into. So let's start out. Share with our listeners today what it is you do, who you do it for, and why you do it. That first question is, what is it you do?
Okay, so basically I'm a digital parenting coach. And then I actually help parents to establish better relationship with their children while empowering them to use electronic device and the internet in a responsible way and staying safe online. Mm-hmm. So basically, I help parents to nurture good habits, especially nowadays. In this especially I think this digital era and also pandemic. All children are actually have to pivot to online schools, or even they're actually using the device actually more. Yes. So that's why there's a lot of problems of internet safety and screen addictions. And that's where I actually came in to establish the parents establish a good habits associated with the screens, and also empower the children to use the electronic device and the internet more for their enrichment, and also the most importantly also staying safe online, so that the children are empowered and able to navigate the online dangers on their own as well.
I think that's super important. As you mentioned, the online dangers. It's one thing for children to be more capable than we ever were of being able to pick up some sort of electronic device and know how to operate it. And I've seen little ones as young as 2 years old are picking up phones and knowing how to swipe. And I look at it and think, I didn't even learn how to do that until I was in my 30s. So it's fascinating to see that just because the technology's there, little people, the children of our world are so competent in using them, and they are not familiar with the really terrifying dangers that are available or happening in the online world. And you say you are involved in digital parenting, so that's really your focus now, isn't it, as what you do?
Yes. And I came from a cybersecurity expertise. I'm a cybersecurity expert, and I've actually spent like more than 14 years, working in cybersecurity. And obviously, I know what is, the dangers out there. And because back then I was actually working in corporations, and we are actually really have to deal with all these hackers, and we have to actually deal with these people, the malicious people who are trying to hack into the organizations. And I know that we're actually dealing with smart people. All these people who is behind in the dark web, they are actually smart. They are not stupid, And in fact, I think that sometimes I felt that they're actually smarter than us, So obviously, as a mother of four, I also have the same concern, because when the pandemic hits, my children also have to pivot to online school. Yeah. And as you know, now in Malaysia, we have been in the lockdown for very long. And for only the last month, the country actually allowed to have some ease of relaxation because of the economy, but the schools are not still open. So can you actually imagine that my children are actually practically on online school for the at least for the 2020 and 2021. And I can actually recall that the only days that they go back to the the physical school is only like less than 3 months for the entire 2 years. And we are not looking beyond that as well, and by end of this year, most likely the school will not be open, at least for my state, because my state is actually badly impacted. So, when I actually came to this, I also realized, oh my God, I have to do the same right now. And I was actually allowing my children to have access to the electronic device, in the past, but it's actually more like a in a control way, you know, because I also don't want them to expose to too much. And then but now when, you know, the pandemic hits and, you know, with online class, they have to be on the device all the time. And then that's where I realized that, okay, I also have to do the same. So let me figure this out. And then at the same time, I have friends actually came to me that because of the pandemic, many teenagers or even children are actually past, you know, they're dedicated to electronic device. Well, my friend actually, you know, tell me that she has to fight with his teenage son, which is I think 13 years old, to get back the phone because the screen addiction is just too much. And, you know, the mom couldn't stand it. And when she tried to take away, you know, the son actually fight back. Then I was like thinking, wow, so you fight because of the smartphone, right? So I think this is kind of ridiculous. And as I actually venture into it and I actually talked to a lot of parents, I realized that, you know, the screen seems to really breaking the families apart. And that's where that I think that my value actually come into the picture. And I hope that I can actually help parents, you know, to establish better relationship, use screen as, you know, to bond as well, rather than use because of the screens, which breaks the relationship, you know, between the child and the parents.
Yeah, absolutely. You touch on so many vital points there. I mean, obviously, this pandemic is global, so it's impacting so many children who are not able to go to the formal physical classroom, and are somehow the magic word pivot seems to have been right across our vocabulary in the last 2 years. Everyone is learning to do something in a different way in order to adapt. And if children are spending more time on screens, which is essential for their education, and that is completely understandable, it's when they're not doing schoolwork, but they're required to do maybe some homework as part of the ongoing outside of school experience. Who's there to monitor them? The parents are already doing their own pivoting to get around this. And it's an incredibly stressful situation, as I'm sure you being a mum of 4 kids, you would know that, especially when you're trying to also run a business. You've got things that you are doing. You're working in an industry that's highly demanding. So it's very difficult for any person to monitor the child's activity. And you probably saw me nodding, you know, furiously when you were saying about the younger teen children, so the ones that are just getting into, say, 13, 14, have almost developed an addiction to their device to the point where giving it up, some will hide it under their pillow. They won't give it back to their parents. They will throw tantrums. And I have seen and heard of that from friends of mine that have also got children with that problem. So what you're doing sounds like you're addressing some really key issues. And I think parents that are going to listen to this are going to find it really fascinating to hear what it is that you've got in terms of, perhaps you can share a few strategies on some of the things that you've been doing. Just taking our conversation that little step further, you also mentioned the dark web. Now, the mention of the dark web should pretty typically give people the jitters, because the dark web in itself is, in a basic description, quite harmless for what it is in its physical structure and what it is designed as. It's just that it's used by people that know to commit crimes, I guess you could say, through the fact that they can't be traced. And I think that's the frightening part. It means that people cannot be traced. You've got to be really, what's the word that might describe it? Not only just outsmart the criminals, as you say, these are pretty intelligent people that are using it to take advantage of very vulnerable people. And the dark web is just, it's too easy to access and far too frightening for what I've seen that can be found on it. So some of the strategies, Jessie, what do you suggest, just 1 or 2 key strategies that you might suggest for what it is that you do to help educate parents?
Okay, so here's what I thought, you know, like when we come to digital parenting, right, many people actually think that this is actually new and something that you need to embrace. But to be honest, the fundamental of parenting has not changed, you know. We are still come back to the fundamentals, because I think at the end of the day, the family structures and communications must be there, and you must have the good relationship with the children. So I actually start with the very fundamentals, which is the family values. So I actually shared the 6 strategies in digital parenting, and it's actually featured in one of the Brains magazine, because where I'm actually the executive contributor. So basically, the first step, if we talk about the 6 strategies to digital parenting, is number 1, you need to have the family values. Okay, so family values which set the foundations, tone, and habits of your family, right? And Terry, let me ask you this. Can I ask, do you have a value that is very close to your heart? What is it?
To me, I value transparency, meaning there's no need to keep anything hidden, no need to keep anything secret. So that would be very important to me.
Okay, and where does this transparent value actually came from?
That is a very good question. I don't know how I would have developed that. Obviously, I would imagine it's probably come from my own family, but I don't see that that was something that specifically taught to me or spoken about as this is what we believe in. So I think I've probably developed it over time.
Okay. So most of the, like for myself, integrity is something that I hold very close, dear to my heart. And how I actually got this integrity is actually from my father. Okay, so obviously, usually, during the dining time when I was actually young, my father always talked about his philosophy about life and how he actually values about integrity. And most parents that I talk to, some of the values that they hold close to their heart is actually come from the family values. Mm-hmm. And of course, you will actually develop some values from your experience of life. Mm-hmm. And then maybe because of some situations you encounter, and you actually have this belief system, and therefore you hold these values to your heart as well. Okay. And the first thing why I actually say that family values is very important is actually a decision-making guideline for both to make in the families, be it in the online and offline, right? So, for example, if let's say kindness is one of your family values, right? So when you are kind, you actually see that, what is the definition of kind? It's very clear to you. You'll not bully someone because you are kind, right? You will not actually say harsh word. Why are you like this? Why are you so ugly? You will actually not say this kind of word because you are a kind person. You hold that value. It's actually about who you are as well. Mm-hmm. So these are the kinds of the values that we should actually teach to our children. So number 1 is actually a decision-making guideline. It's also define the future self of the children, because if they actually hold it to to whatever future, just like me, my father planted the seeds when I was actually young, when to talk about integrity is very important. So, and I hold it until I'm today, and I'm already in my 40s, right? And then why is actually also very important. It's also a decision-making guideline. So if any conflicts or any decisions that you need to make together as a family unit, you can always refer to something that you guys actually agree on. Exactly. Like, if let's say this is kindness, and okay, so you have this screen time problems, would you actually snatch away the device from your child? Is it portray kindness, right? So you will actually start assessing that whether is it kindness. Am I actually being a role model? Because you have to understand, at the end of the day, children don't do what we say. Children do what they saw we are doing. Yes, we are the role model, right? So when we actually portraying that, we just snatch away and we just say harsh words, like, why are you like this? You are screen addicted. And it's actually also, implant the belief systems to the children that they are addicted to screens. And also that, they are felt that they are not enough, right? So, and also it's actually, in fact, create, the gap in the family, because, there's no closeness and the relationship is actually not bond. Okay. So, and then secondly, why I feel that in family values is more importantly right now, it's because, when you're exposed to many contents, especially on the internet, and to be honest, internet has billions of contents, and every day we still have millions being released every day, right? Yep. So, the content that exposed to us many, many times will start to shape our belief systems and our values as well. So if we don't give our children the family values, they will adopt someone else's value. Absolutely. And this is very true, especially I talk to a lot of parents who have their children already exposed to internet for years. And then they realize that, the children start to adopt someone else's value. And sometimes they felt that my children is not my children anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the scariest part, right?
Yeah.
So I think the first one is you definitely need to have the family values. And the second part is about the internet safety habits agreement. If you don't set the expectation and what are the things that you should behave online, how would the children knows, right? If you don't educate the children about internet dangers, how they do know that there's a danger out there? It's just fascinating that, we as a parents, we used to educate our children like the danger in the real world, like for example, online stranger, don't talk to strangers. You cross the roads, what do? You will teach your children, look left and look right and look to left again to make sure there's no car and there's nothing danger, only you cross the roads, right? So basically it's the same for the online world. You just need to teach the same and get them to agree. Why I say actually not rules and agreement, because at the end of the day, the children are the users of the electronic device. They are the internet users. So we need to teach and get them to see why they need to behave. The why is actually very important, because ultimately, I think children also want them to get them safe. They don't want to be in the danger, That's why that's why the agreement is good, so that they can actually both agree on this is the setup and this is the habits that we should portray. And obviously the parents also have to portray, there's no point telling the children that, okay, you should spend very less time, 1 hour in the screen time, but the parents actually show like she's on the screen all the time. It's actually not. Yeah, right. So come back to you, Terry. You have any questions?
Everything that you're talking about makes so much sense. I mean, it's all about showing children, because as you say, they may learn from what you tell them, but they will mostly learn from what they see. Their young brains are still developing, so they absorb a lot of information and they process a lot of things, but they don't always have the brain or emotional maturity to interpret what they're seeing in a way that they can then make positive sense of it. And unless the parents or the caregivers, whoever are the proper role models for the children, unless they are setting the benchmark, the children don't have any reason to not behave in a way that is perhaps endangering them. And as we know, the internet is a fabulous, amazing, incredible place. I absolutely love it. I think it's one of the best things that we ever invented. However, so do a lot of criminals. And unfortunately, I wonder if you would think it's fair to say that maybe parents feel a little bit either not perhaps as educated as they could be about the dangers of the internet in terms of how children may perceive that danger, and maybe not have the skills to be able to educate their children, because as you say, crossing the road, yes, well, we all do that. We all know how to cross the road because, that's what's taught to us. And we also know after life experience how to interpret the benefit of learning those skills as being something we're glad that we know. So we teach it to our children because we want our children to be safe. And I guess when we're applying that to the internet, parents may not really know the best way to frame what the danger is, because perhaps they themselves, if they're anything like me, in my growing up, there wasn't an internet. Google's really only been around for, I think, 23 years. And, some people, they may only have started having children maybe 10 years prior to that. So there wasn't a lot of time to really become familiar and educated with the experiences on what the internet's about. So unless you know what those dangers are, how do you educate your children about what they are and how to avoid them? And your experience in cybersecurity, that honestly, that I wonder sometimes if you can sleep at night knowing what those concerns and worries are, because I have my own personal interest in understanding what the dark web is about. And it's fascinating, but it is quite a scary place. There are some quite horrific things that can really take place in that place that we call the dark web. Now, with cybersecurity as your background, obviously, and 14 years is a long time to spend in that environment. do you think that it's possible, and I wonder what your thoughts are, when it comes to parents not really knowing what do they educate their children about in terms of what are the dangers of using the internet, not only from screen time being a habit and being just something that is not necessarily healthy anyway, but just exploring the internet and getting into those chat zones and things like that. What's been your experience or your thoughts? What's the information you probably pass on to parents?
Yes, I totally agree with you. Because right now, I guess that we are, I would say that we are the first batch of generations, parent generations that have to actually digital our children. Because prior to that, if you actually go back to your mom, how do you digital parenting? They'll say, okay, but that time we don't have smartphones, right? And during even I think when I was actually studying, I only get access to internet when I was like, I think maybe 15 or 16 years old, if I'm not wrong. And that time is actually really slow, and you can actually remember, I can still remember that time I have to actually do the dial up and you have to and sometimes couldn't connect, right? So, and the internet is so super slow. And that time, the PC, that time we still don't have the laptop, if you remember back the days. The desktop is huge, right? It's a huge laptop. It's actually very bulky, and there's not so much of apps that time. So the addictions to the computer is actually not widely known, other than the games, because the games are and that time the games are still like more like an offline mode where they don't allow like the the multiplayers. It's more like if it's multiplayers, it's within your network, but it's not the multiplayers from all over the world right now. Right. So the landscape is actually totally different. And I agree that as a parents right now, you have to learn new skills. That's why I always say that in this digital era, we have to learn new skills to digital parent our children. We cannot use back the same conventional way that, oh, my mom did that, so I think this is the right way. So no, you have to definitely learn the new skills to digital parent your children. And that's where you need to educate about the online dangers, like the online strangers. It could be as simple as the online strangers. We always talk about the strangers out there. Don't talk to strangers. But what about the online strangers? Did we actually educate, right? So it's actually fascinating that people talk about the dangers of the physical strangers out there, but no one is actually really talking about the online strangers. And one of the reasons why I actually came to, I decided that I want to venture into this is when I see the Kaylee Haywood love stories. It was actually a 15-year-old girl from Leicester. She was actually online groomed back in 2015, November. She passed, she actually was murdered. She was online groomed, went out to meet the guy, and obviously raped and killed in November 2015. And after that, the Leicester police department actually make a they call it love story of Kelly Haywood. And I stumbled that, and I realized that, oh my God, this is really bad, and they just lost the daughter because of this, and how actually Kelly actually got to know this is because of the not knowing that you're not supposed to respond to any stranger as well, right? So she actually got the Facebook message from this guy, and she was curious. And as everyone, as every one of us, we are all curious about what is out there as well, but we also have to understand what is the dangers out there. So and because of the and for just the short 14 days, the guy was able to online groom and make Kelly trust him and ask her to actually ask her to actually go out with him, right? So you can actually see that our children, even as 15 years old, they still need some guidance from us. We still need to communicate, we still need to educate. And if let's say really they want to meet these online strangers, why not talk to the parents? I have this and I want to meet him, right? Maybe you can say, okay, we can meet, but I will be there.
Absolutely.
Right? I think it's a better choice rather than you say cannot, and then she's going to meet the guy secretly. I think it's even the worst case scenario.
Mhm.
So I think it's about like, some of it could be really about the online dangers out there, and the choices of the apps we allow our children. If let's say we allow the the apps to be in their phone, on the device, we have to educate about the dangers out there.
Yeah, absolutely. You really raise a really important point there, and part of the reason that I find this this discussion about digital parenting and the internet, and particularly cybersecurity from within the family home, so to speak, is because of the dangers that are posed by the online predators who are grooming children, and they have obviously evil, malicious intent. There is no escaping that. They don't do it for fun. They don't do it because they're really just nice people. They are not. They are clearly criminal. They clearly have malicious intent. And it is absolutely horrific and frightening, the number of young girls particularly, but also older women who have never really been that familiar with using the internet, who perhaps are, less confident on technology, and they become involved in chat sites, dating sites, various of those types of platforms, and find themselves being fooled by people who are manipulative and using the platforms for really malicious intent. The number of older women that go out on dates from people that have criminal backgrounds. And I'm certainly not about making this gender stereotyping. I know that there are some very unpleasant women who use this. I'm very familiar with what can be done with the internet from a malicious intent point of view, from just some of the research that I have done for other reasons. So I think it's really super important, and it sounds like you've really got that as an area of expertise as part of what you do in digital parenting, is helping people to understand that the internet, as fabulous as it is also being used by criminal people, and you need to become familiar, as you say, with a new set of skills. This can't be done as parenting the old way, like our parents taught us. We need to learn, how do you parentally, digitally expose your children to the use of the internet? How do you do that in a safe and I suppose a not governed, but you want to monitor it. You want to monitor your children's use. But it does come back to, and I wonder if you agree, it comes back to the family values that you mentioned. To have these conversations means that your children are open to, to the disciplinary approach that you take, and letting them understand that you're the parent, you're the one who must control the exposures, but let them know why. Educate them, show the children as safe and as suitably as required what they're likely to be exposed to, but in a way that meets the age of the child. Obviously, you've got to monitor what they're exposed to, but it's a fascinating area, but it does have its challenges. I can imagine that you must have a lot of questions that parents put to you about, what do we do? How do we do this? So, it's certainly an area that I'm sure you must get a lot of inquiries about.
Oh, yes. Actually, sometimes I think in this era is like, because we have to monitor the children's, the digital footprint as well. I think that's the dilemma. You don't want to invade too much, because when you invade too much, your teenagers, as I think especially for teenagers, they will actually feel offended, like, why, mom, you don't trust me, right? Yeah. Right. And they'll actually come to the questions of the, the basis of trust. But at the same time, if we don't monitor, there's also like, what is happening out there. Yep. Right? So it's actually you have to actually strike a balance. And that's why I think the Internet Safety Habits Agreement is the way, to communicate, which is the basis of, at the same time, you're able to do what you want, but at the same time, you're actually able to get yourself safe. And obviously, I will still ask the parents to install the, just to know that what they are doing, yes, but not to the extent that you monitor excessively, like, oh, today you actually surf this site, what are you doing? Not to the extent. It's just monitor to, to see that whether there's anything that is very, something is wrong or something like that. And sometimes even if they see that, hey, well, how come she's excessively sex? And my conversation with my child is always like, hey, I saw that you're actually going this site. What are you actually looking at? Can you show me? Be curious. be listening to your child.
Mhm.
And when you're actually able to do that and they trust you, I can say that over most of the time they are willing to show you what they are doing, and they say that, oh, I learned this, I find this is interesting, and that's why I actually go in further. And then when and the one that I'm really concerned is about like the content, because I think that as I said, the content that's shown to them many times will start to brainwash. If you want to actually say it's actually really brainwash the children, like some of the behavior is actually acceptable.
Yeah.
Like some. So, and therefore the content that they see is we always have discussion about like what are the things that they're actually seeing, what they learn, so that I know what is actually on their mind as well, rather than have to go on the sites checking one by one. Why not have a discussion? And that's the third thing. One of the things is I actually educate is have a family meeting, have a conversations about your online habits, about the content they see, what they've actually done online, and also have the education about the internet safety. Because like I said, if you don't educate them, they have no idea the dangers out there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes. So I think yesterday I have posted one, like the dangerous apps in your child's smartphone, and I think I put one WhatsApp is one of the, and then I think one of the parents actually comment on my post, and then I say that actually there's a lot of scammers, scammers. They actually targeted people on the WhatsApp. And some people will actually just hope on it, and they carry conversation, and that's where it all starts. And because I received my daughter have a WhatsApp because it's required, because because of the online school, the teachers actually use the WhatsApp to communicate with the children. So yeah, so she has WhatsApp, and also educate her about like don't respond to people you do not know. And constantly I have I constantly get a lot of strangers actually targeting me on the WhatsApp, and I actually teach them how do you identify strangers and how do you check. And also I have a post which I talk about that particular post. So you have to really educate about the the online habits and also the internet safety. So if we talk about the 6 strategies just now, so we talk about family values. So we also talk about the internet safety habits agreement. Then we also talk about family meeting. You must have constant communications with them, right? And then you must have the education of internet safety, right? And obviously you need to have the the process to break the bad habits and the making the good habits, because you know what, we are all habits creature. Think of it, we have some certain habits to our cell phone, even for ourselves, right? And to be honest, sometimes it's funny that I have parents actually come to me. I'm the one actually got the problem with the screen.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think it's so important that we recognize that we have our own habits. Obviously, habits they become habits, which generally implies that they are unconscious. You don't know that you've got them. It's only until you raise your awareness about the behavior that you become aware that that behavior is something that you do automatically. Hence, it's called a habit. So, once we break the habit, which takes a lot of work, and there are certain quick hacks that you can do to help speed the process, but breaking a habit is something that can take quite a bit, because there's a lot that goes into developing the habit in the first place. So if we can have them as adults, what's to say that children can't develop them too? So, we've got to be aware of what are our habits, what are the problems that we're having with the use of technology, and how is that habit perhaps impacting the way we're parenting our children who have ready access to devices. So yeah, I certainly hear what you're saying about the habits. It's a personal interest of mine, and I totally hear you when you say that. So you've shared some fantastic tips. Obviously, you mentioned the 6 strategies. You've shared 3 in quite detail. I just really appreciate. I'm sure the audience will be really finding great value in that. And we talked in terms of the 3 prime questions that I like to ask through these interviews is, what is it you do? Now, clearly, we've talked about a lot of your cybersecurity and family value parenting and digital parenting experience. And who do you do it for? Obviously, families, parents, but I guess anyone who wants to talk with you about developing safer internet usage. It could be, do you find perhaps, and this is what was going through my mind as you were talking, My mother's in her 70s, and we recently bought her not only a brand new phone, but also, and she got herself a new laptop. But it is actually really quite disconcerting because she's a little too trusting and doesn't always know when a message comes through or if a email comes through, how to know if it is from an authentic source. So the authenticity of the sender is something, as you say, using WhatsApp, how do you check? How do you know? So really, I wonder if your audience is more than just digital parenting, because sometimes when you're a mature child and you've got an older parent, you have to parent them too. So I wonder if your audience could expand there.
Okay. Well, my passion is still on children, and that's where I choose digital parenting, because I felt that, and it's also an invitation to a journey, because it's a journey that I'm right now. And my children are young. My eldest is 11 years old, and my second is actually 8 years old, and I have a pair of twins. They are 5 years old. So it's also a things that I have to do on my own as well, because I have my children to digital parenting. And that's where I felt that this is the best, because I'm doing it myself. And why not? I just invite other parents to be on the same journey, so that, we can actually go through it together. Because I guess that I'm slightly ahead. Number one, I have the cybersecurity expertise, and also like I have a very good communications and parenting skills, and I'm also fascinating about habits. I'm also all about habits, and that's why I'm able to combine internet safety, parenting, and habits into one program. And that's where I think I will contribute the best to this specific community at this moment. But I do agree with you, like you mentioned about like the elderlies, and also the some women who actually, and in back in Malaysia, we have a lot of scams, like that scams, the love scams, I remember there's a syndicate name, but I can't remember what's the name. I think I can call like Macau scam, like something like that. And where all these people, they will actually pretend that they are a very handsome guy, and they will actually approach, usually the elderly woman, which is still single, and they will express their interest in them. And after a few months of chatting and communications, and then this is there where they will actually start that, oh, I sent you a parcel, it got caught in the, you have to give me don't know how many thousands of dollars, and that's how it actually got. And after that, they ask more. Maybe in the beginning, they ask you for a few thousand, and after that, they'll ask for more and more and more. And you'll be surprised that I think I've actually saw that people just lost 100,000 ringgit Malaysia. It's about, and it's, to be honest, in 100,000 ringgit Malaysia in Malaysia is a huge sum, and it's just that the hard-earned monies of these women has just lost because of the scams. And usually they also go into the emotional, like the loneliness and all that. So some of the habits is also about like the internal triggers, which is the emotions that you're having right now, whether it's loneliness, it's boredom, or it's something that you want to run away. And even it's actually same for children, sometimes children, when they want to go to the screens, it could be something that they want to run away from. That's where we have to start check what is they are running from, and that's where we can actually start breaking the habits and actually nurture the good habits. But obviously I will say that the best to start this is when you give the device to your children, because breaking bad habits are hard. Well, like what you say, it will take a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of, in fact, pains, sweats, and tears, because you realize that you have to break your child screen addictions, so it's hard. So it's best to start, because if you start in the beginning, you are start just to nurture good screen habits and not break the bad habits. Right?
Yeah, it's important to start somewhere. And I think parents will gain confidence in the ability to be stronger and more competent digital parents just by realizing that they've got to start somewhere, but they need to be themselves aware of the dangers, and then also aware of how to have those communications. And it sounds like you covered them all off with a lot of the strategies that you talk about. So I think that's really important. You know, we've talked about what it is you do and who you do it for. I'd love to just finally, I suppose, wrap up by asking, why do you do it? Now, I know you have covered off because it was about your children and you started the journey with your own children. What's your greater mission with this? Why do you do this? What's been the inspiration, I suppose, long term for your project, being a digital parent?
I think one of the main reasons why I started is because of the Haywood stories. You know, I realized that the internet can really break, and make, you lost your child to the internet dangerous. And even sometimes it's not online grooming, even the screen addictions, when the child is actually addicted to the screens, you can't see that there's much future there, because she's just constantly hooked to the screens and he's not interested in his studies. And as there's nothing else that he can actually do, other than, attach the screens, and that's where I actually think that this is where that I need to start. And then I was also thinking that one of the reasons why I actually start to, want to venture into this is I want to fulfill my life purpose as well. Because, back then, back in, like, I can share with this, with the audience, like I recall March 2019, one of my good friend passed away. And when I attended the funeral, so, the short story cut short, because there's a lot of things that I want to talk about, but, it's a bit long stories. So I remember I went to her funeral. Her 12-year-old son actually came and spoke about his mom. Actually, my friend endured a lot, because when she discovered she has no cancer 3 years back, prior 2019, she also discovered the unfaithful event of her spouse, which leads to divorce. So she was going through, the chemotherapy, the treatment of cancer, at the same time have to go through the divorce. So it was very, very painful for her. And then when I actually attended the funeral, I recall that the son actually came out and spoke about his mom. My friend was able to live in peace because she was able to pass away, and she really let go. She even actually forgive her ex-husband despite the pain that he has actually brought her. And the most beautiful part, the boy was very confident, and she was trying to make his mom proud, And I can recall the lines, like my mom teach me about love for my family, courage, and forgiveness, right? So it's also back to the family values, despite that my friend has very short term in this earth, she was 43 when she passed away, she has actually prepared his son well, right? So it's also my mission that, I think that if, let's say, we can actually use these family values and really, give the family values, for something our children to call on, it will be a very beautiful parents and child relationship, and I'm just sad that, nowadays, if we go out, when you dine in, although we are not allowed to dine in at the moment, but in the past, you can actually see that when people dine in, the parents, the child, all of them are on the screen time, and the dinner time is just quiet, right? Yeah, we just lost it. I think we should actually go back, back to the fundamentals, because if you don't spend your time with your children right now, when they are big, they are not going to spend time with you, and that's the reality. So I've got the inspirations from my friends, and I hope that I can actually pass this message to continue for other parents as well, as much as my friends actually passed to me.
Yeah, I think it's a very sad story, and I'm very sorry for your loss. And it's such a poignant story about what her child learned, and as you say, linked it to family values, and that whole experience of we learn what we learn at such a young age, and sometimes we one of the experiences I know for myself is much of what I learned as a child I had to unlearn as an adult, and we need to really be careful what we let our children learn, or what we teach them, or what we allow them to become educated about, if we're not helping them to understand and analyze and become thinkers. Because unfortunately, I think screen time allows them to become doers. They're doing something all the time, and as you mentioned earlier, it's about maybe they're trying to avoid something, maybe something terrible is happening in their world, and they're hiding themselves in screen time to avoid facing that experience that's causing them some sort of pain or distress or anger or frustration or other big emotions that children quite often don't know how to deal with. So screen time allows them to hide from a lot of those really overwhelming feelings and thoughts. And it's a real do thing. It's an action thing. It's something that I can do. I can sit in front of my computer or my laptop or my tablet or my phone, and I can play games or I can chat or I can do these things. That way I'm not focusing or thinking about the things that are upsetting me. And if they are, the chances are if they do cross paths with somebody who has less than a kind heart, as you mentioned with the value, if someone's a bully who does say awful things, it astounds me to read the number of times children will say to others, why don't you just go and kill yourself? Why don't you die? Those things are so heartless. And yet children are saying those things to each other, often without realizing the impact of what they've said, or with very, very strong awareness of what that means, just not realizing the impact if someone does carry out those words. So there is this need to be aware of what our children are feeling, understand those big feelings, help them to communicate, help them to express themselves in ways that allow, as you were mentioning earlier, have those open conversations with your child earlier so that when they are in some sort of difficulty, they come to you and they speak with you about it rather than going to the computer and hiding and exposing themselves to all the risks that are there. So I think you've covered so many valuable points, and I think it's really important that there is an awareness of the changed landscape of parenting today. And certainly I think digital parenting is the new form of parenting, or one of the many new aspects of parenting that's important today. So it's really been quite a fascinating conversation, Jessie. Thank you so much for sharing what you do, who you do it for, and why you do it with the audience for Voice on Fire today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Terry. And I hope that this can actually really bring the values to all the audience who actually listen to Voice on Fire interviews.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Jessie. It's been an absolute lovely conversation. You're listening to or watching Voice on Fire interviews with intention. Voice on Fire is a series of interviews with amazing change makers, difference makers, action takers, people that are on a mission to make a difference around the world. The interviews feature people that, no matter what their situation, no matter the adversity, no matter the challenge, are on a mission to help others or to make a global environmental difference. I hope you enjoy the series. Don't forget, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you know when the next interview is being uploaded. Enjoy.